My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 33 years old, and for the last 8 years I've been running an online business from my home in Denver, Colorado. I sell camping and outdoor equipment through e-commerce platforms. The business does well. Really well, actually. But you wouldn't know that by looking at me or talking to my father. Raymond Mitchell, my dad, is 60 years old. He spent 30 years teaching high school history before retiring 3 years ago. To him, a real job means wearing a tie, commuting to an office, and having a boss who can fire you. My work, done from a laptop in my living room, never registered as legitimate in his mind. He'd ask when I was going to get a real career every time we spoke. My younger brother Liam is 29. He works as a manager at a luxury retail store downtown. Designer clothes, expensive watches, the kind of place where a belt costs $400. Liam dresses the part too. Sharp suits, Italian leather shoes, a late model Audi in the driveway of his upscale apartment. My father loved talking about him, loved showing off pictures, loved telling his friends that at least one of his sons had made something of himself. The comparison started when we were teenagers and never stopped. Dad would say things like, "Liam knows how to present himself professionally," or, "Your brother understands the value of hard work." It stung every single time, but I learned to keep quiet. I told myself that actions mattered more than words, that eventually my father would see what I'd built. 2 years ago, in late September 2023, Liam called me late one night. He sounded desperate. His rent was 3 weeks overdue and his landlord was threatening eviction. He'd maxed out 2 credit cards and couldn't make the minimum payments. The Audi lease was in default. Everything was falling apart, and he needed help immediately. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. I asked him how this happened. He made decent money at the store, around $55,000 a year, enough to cover basics. He admitted he'd been living beyond his means for years, spending everything he earned and then some to maintain an image. The apartment, the car, the clothes, the dinners at restaurants where entrees started at $60. It was all a performance, and the curtain was falling. I made a choice that night. I told him I'd help, but he couldn't tell anyone. Not Dad, not our relatives, nobody. I started transferring money every month, $1,500 for rent, $800 for the car, another $1,000 to chip away at credit card debt. Miscellaneous expenses brought it to roughly $4,000 a month. I justified it to myself in different ways. He was family. He was younger and still figuring things out. Maybe if I helped him get stable, he'd turn things around. And somewhere deep down, I thought that if I could be the reason my brother succeeded, maybe Dad would finally respect me too. But nothing changed. Dad kept praising Liam's independence and responsibility, kept holding him up as the example I should follow. At family gatherings, he'd toast to Liam's success while barely acknowledging my presence. I was the invisible son, the one who still hadn't figured out adulthood according to my own father. For 2 years, from October 2023 to October 2025, I watched this happen. 2 years of funding my brother's fake success while being treated like the family disappointment. I told myself it would get better, that the truth would come out naturally somehow, that Liam would tell Dad eventually and clear things up. He never did. Last month, in late September 2025, Dad organized a family dinner at his house. Extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone gathered around the dining table, and Dad stood up with his wine glass raised. He announced he wanted to make a toast to Liam, who'd just gotten a small promotion at work. He went on about how proud he was, how Liam represented everything a young man should be. Responsible, independent, successful. Then he looked at me and said, "I just wish your brother had the same drive you do, Ryan. Maybe you'd have amounted to something by now, too." The room went quiet for a second. Then people laughed politely. It was supposed to be a joke, but it wasn't funny. Not to me. I sat there with a forced smile, holding a glass of water, while my father celebrated a success I was literally paying for. That's when something shifted inside me. I realized I'd spent 2 years enabling my own humiliation. I'd bankrolled the pedestal my brother stood on while Dad used me as a punchline. The anger I felt wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold and clarifying. I decided right then that the truth needed to come out. All of it. Tonight. I waited until dessert was served. Everyone was relaxed, laughing, enjoying themselves. Dad was still going on about Liam's promotion, asking him questions about his responsibilities at the store. Liam played along perfectly, describing his workday like he was running a Fortune 500 company instead of managing a retail floor. I set down my fork and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Dad, can I say something?" He looked surprised that I was speaking up. "Of course. You've spent the last 2 years telling everyone how successful Liam is, how independent and responsible he is. I think it's time everyone knew the whole story." Liam's face went pale immediately. He knew exactly what was coming. "Ryan, don't—" I ignored him and kept my eyes on Dad. "For the past 24 months, I've been transferring $4,000 to Liam every single month. That's $96,000 total. His rent, his car payment, his credit card bills, his entire lifestyle. I've been paying for all of it." The room went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. My aunt put down her wine glass. My uncle stopped mid-chew. Dad stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "What are you talking about? Liam called me 2 years ago in September 2023 and told me he was about to lose everything. He'd been living way beyond his means and couldn't keep up. I agreed to help him get back on his feet, but he was supposed to keep it temporary and private. Instead, he's been taking my money every month and letting everyone believe he's supporting himself." Liam tried to interrupt. "It was supposed to be a loan. I was going to pay you back." "You never paid back a single dollar," I said calmly. "Not one. And you never told Dad the truth. You let him believe you were doing it all on your own while he compared us and made me feel like a failure." Dad looked at Liam, waiting for a denial that never came. "Is this true?" Liam opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I was going through a rough patch. Ryan offered to help. I didn't think it was anyone else's business." "A rough patch?" I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I'd prepared for this. "Let me show you the transfers. October 2023, $4,000. November 2023, $4,000. December, January, February. Every single month for 2 years. Here's the list of what it covered." I read from my notes. $1,500 for his apartment on Larimer Street. $800 for the Audi A4 lease. Between $800 and $1,200 a month for credit card payments. The rest went to utilities, insurance, and whatever else he needed to maintain the image. My aunt spoke up. "Ryan, are you serious right now?" "Completely serious. I have bank statements, transfer receipts, text messages where he asked for specific amounts. I documented everything." Dad was staring at Liam now, and the expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like he was watching something collapse in real time. "Why didn't you tell me you were struggling?" Liam's voice got defensive. "Because I knew you'd be disappointed. I knew you'd think I was a failure." "So you took money from your brother and lied to everyone instead?" "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you where the money was coming from." I leaned back in my chair. "You did more than that. You let Dad criticize me for not being like you. You let him hold you up as the example I should follow. You watched him tear me down at every family event and you never said a word." The table stayed silent. Nobody knew what to say. My cousin was staring at her plate. My uncle had his arms crossed, looking at Liam like he'd just discovered something rotten. Dad finally spoke and his voice was quieter than before. "Ryan, why did you keep helping him if he wasn't paying you back?" "Because I'm an idiot who thought family meant something. I thought if I helped him succeed, maybe you'd finally see that I wasn't the screw-up you always made me out to be. But that's over now." I looked directly at Liam. "I'm done. No more transfers, no more bailouts. Starting today, you're actually going to have to support yourself." Liam's eyes widened. "Ryan, wait, I need time to figure things out. I can't just—" "You've had 2 years to figure it out. You chose not to. That's not my problem anymore." Dad was still processing everything. "Ryan, what exactly do you do for a living? How do you have that kind of money to give away every month?" This was the part I'd been waiting for. I run an e-commerce business specializing in camping and outdoor equipment. Tents, backpacks, portable stoves, hiking gear. I source products from manufacturers, sell them through my website and platforms like Amazon and eBay, and manage everything from home. I use Google Ads and social media marketing to drive traffic. Last year, my revenue was just over $750,000. After expenses and taxes, I cleared about $270,000 in profit. You could hear a pin drop. Dad looked like I'd just told him I was secretly an astronaut. $270,000, he repeated. Give or take, this year's tracking higher. I've been doing this for 8 years since 2017. Built it from nothing. No investors, no loans, just me and a laptop. My uncle whistled low. And you've been giving your brother $4,000 a month out of that? I was. Not anymore. Dad sat down slowly, like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. He kept looking between me and Liam, trying to reconcile what he'd believed with what was actually true. The son he'd written off as directionless had built something substantial. The son he'd praised as a success was living on borrowed money and borrowed time. Liam made one more attempt. I was going to tell everyone eventually. I just needed to get stable first. You had 24 months, I said. How much more stable did you need to be? He didn't have an answer for that. I stood up from the table. I'm going home. Thanks for dinner, Dad. I walked out while everyone was still sitting in stunned silence. I didn't slam the door or make a scene. I just left. The truth was out there now, and I didn't need to say anything else. The drive home felt surreal. I'd been carrying that secret for 2 years, and now it was gone. No more pretending, no more swallowing my pride while Dad compared us. No more funding a lie. My phone started buzzing before I even got home. Text messages from relatives. Missed calls from Liam. I ignored all of it. I'd said what needed to be said. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Liam. A few from Dad. Some from relatives who wanted to know if what I'd said was really true. I made coffee, sat on my back deck, and started reading through them. Liam's messages went through several stages. First came denial. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone. Then bargaining. Can we talk about this? I'll start paying you back, I promise. Then anger. You had no right to air our private business like that. Finally, desperation. Ryan, please, I'm going to lose everything. Dad's messages were shorter. We need to talk. Call me when you can. I didn't respond to Liam. I called Dad that afternoon. He answered on the first ring. Ryan. Hey, Dad. There was a long pause. Is everything you said last night true? All of it? Every word. I can show you the bank records if you want proof. He was quiet for a moment. I believe you. I guess I'm trying to understand why you didn't tell me sooner. Would you have believed me if I had? 2 years ago, if I'd told you Liam was broke and I was supporting him, would you have taken my word for it? Or would you have thought I was jealous and making things up? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was softer. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have believed you. That's hard to admit. That's why I didn't say anything. I thought the situation would resolve itself. I thought Liam would get his finances together and eventually tell you the truth. But he never did. And you kept comparing us, kept making me feel like I wasn't good enough, while I was literally paying for the success you praised him for. I didn't know, Ryan. If I'd known... If you'd known what? You would have treated me differently? Respected me more? That's the problem, Dad. You only respect what looks successful to you. Liam looked the part, so you assumed he had his life together. I didn't fit your image of success, so you assumed I was failing. You never bothered to actually ask me about my business or what I was doing. He was silent. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Tell me about it now, he finally said. Your business, I want to understand. So I explained it to him. How I'd started 8 years ago in 2017, buying bulk camping equipment from suppliers and reselling it online. How I'd built relationships with manufacturers overseas and negotiated better prices. How I'd optimized my website for search engines and built a customer base through quality products and fast shipping. how I'd expanded into multiple platforms and hired a part-time assistant to help with orders during busy seasons, how I'd learned to use automation tools and paid advertising to scale efficiently. I told him about the inventory system I'd developed, the profit margins I maintained, the seasonal fluctuations I'd learned to predict. I explained how working from home didn't mean I wasn't working. Some days I was at my computer for 12 hours straight, managing suppliers, processing orders, handling customer service issues, updating product listings. When I finished, he said, "I had no idea. I thought you were just selling things online as a hobby." It stopped being a hobby 6 years ago in 2019, but you never asked, so I never told you. I'm sorry, Ryan, I really am. I made assumptions about you that weren't fair. I appreciate that, but the apology doesn't fix the last 2 years. I know. He paused. What's going to happen to Liam? That's up to him. I'm not giving him any more money. He'll have to figure it out like everyone else does. He called me this morning. He's panicking. Says he can't afford his apartment without your help. Then he needs to find a cheaper apartment. People live within their means every day. He can too. You're really not going to help him at all? I helped him for 2 years, Dad. I sacrificed my own financial goals to keep him afloat. I could have expanded my business, invested in better inventory, hired full-time staff. Instead, I poured nearly $100,000 into maintaining his lifestyle so he could impress people. That's over, Dad sighed. Fair enough. I can't argue with that. We talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. At least he was finally asking questions instead of making assumptions. Over the next 2 weeks, Liam's situation deteriorated rapidly. Without my monthly transfers, he couldn't cover his bills. His landlord began eviction proceedings. The leasing company repossessed the Audi. His credit cards went into default because he couldn't make the minimum payments anymore. I heard about all this through family gossip. My aunt called to tell me Liam had moved out of his apartment and into a much cheaper place on the east side of town. My cousin mentioned seeing him taking the bus to work. My uncle said Liam had stopped posting on Instagram and Facebook entirely, which made sense. Hard to maintain an image of success when your whole life is falling apart. I felt bad for him in a distant way, the same way you feel bad when you hear about a stranger losing their job. But I didn't feel guilty. He'd built his house on sand, and when the tide came in, it washed away. That wasn't my fault. Meanwhile, I took the $4,000 I'd been giving him every month and reinvested it into my business. I upgraded my website hosting to handle more traffic. I expanded my product line to include higher-end camping gear, like ultralight tents, and advanced GPS devices. I hired a second part-time employee to handle social media marketing. Within a month, my revenue increased by 18%. Turns out that having an extra $48,000 a year to invest in your business makes a significant difference. Dad called me again 3 weeks after the dinner in mid-October 2025. Can I come by your place? I'd like to see where you work. Sure. Tomorrow afternoon work for you? That's perfect. He showed up at 2 o'clock the next day. The October air was already getting crisp, and I could see early snow dusting the peaks of the Rockies in the distance. I gave him a tour of my home office, showed him my inventory system, walked him through how orders were processed and shipped. He asked good questions, thoughtful ones. He actually seemed interested. We sat in my living room afterward, drinking coffee. He looked around, visibly uncomfortable, and I could see him processing everything he'd said over the years against what he was seeing now. This is impressive, Ryan, he said. I mean it. You built something real here. Thanks. I owe you a bigger apology than I gave you on the phone. I spent years making you feel like you weren't measuring up, and the whole time you were doing better than I ever did as a teacher. That was wrong of me. I appreciate you saying that. For what it's worth, I talked to Liam. Told him he needs to take responsibility for his own life. He's not happy with either of us right now, but that's his problem to work through. How's he doing? He's struggling. Got a studio apartment for about $900 a month. Takes the RTD bus to work. He's embarrassed and angry and doesn't want to talk to anyone in the family. I nodded. He'll survive. People bounce back from worse. You're not going to help him at all? Even a little? No. He needs to learn to stand on his own. I can't do that for him. Dad looked at me with something close to respect. You're tougher than I gave you credit for. I'm not tough. I'm just done being taken advantage of. He stayed for another hour. We talked about my business plans, about his retirement, about things that had nothing to do with Liam. It felt normal, almost comfortable, like we were finally talking to each other as equals instead of as disappointed father and disappointing son. After he left, I sat on my deck and watched the sun go down over the Rockies. The weight I'd been carrying for 2 years was gone. I didn't have to pretend anymore, didn't have to fund someone else's facade, didn't have to accept being treated as less than. The truth had done exactly what I'd hoped it would. It had destroyed the lie and forced everyone to see reality clearly. A few months passed. Life settled into a new normal. My business continued growing. I landed a partnership with a regional outdoor recreation chain that wanted to carry my private label gear. The deal added another $70,000 in projected annual revenue. I hired my first full-time employee, a logistics coordinator who could manage shipping and inventory, while I focused on product development and supplier relationships. Dad and I talked every couple of weeks now. Real conversations. He asked about my business decisions, offered thoughts from his own experience managing school budgets and dealing with difficult people. We weren't best friends, but we'd found a functional relationship built on mutual respect instead of disappointment and assumptions. Liam and I hadn't spoken since the dinner. I'd heard updates through the family grapevine. He'd sold most of his expensive clothes and watches to cover debts. He was still working at the retail store, but the promotion Dad had bragged about turned out to be a minor title change with barely any salary increase. He'd moved to an even smaller apartment after 6 weeks because he couldn't keep up with the $900 rent. I didn't take any pleasure in his struggles, but I didn't feel guilty either. He'd made choices, and now he was living with the consequences. That's how life works. One Saturday afternoon in mid-December, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Liam was standing there. He looked different, thinner, tired. He was wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, nothing like the designer outfits he used to favor. The cold Denver winter had already arrived, and he was shivering slightly. "Can we talk?" he asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." We sat in my living room. He looked around at my setup, the office visible through the open door, the shipping supplies stacked neatly in the corner. "Nice place," he said. "Thanks." He was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "I've been thinking about what happened, about everything. I owe you an apology." "Okay. I was using you. I knew what I was doing and I did it anyway. I let Dad compare us and make you feel like crap because it made me look good by contrast. That was wrong." I nodded but didn't say anything. "I've spent the last few months trying to figure out how I got here," he continued. "How I ended up so broke that I had to beg my brother for money and then lie to everyone about it. And I think I know now." "What's that?" "I was so focused on looking successful that I never actually tried to be successful. I bought things I couldn't afford because I wanted people to be impressed. I wanted Dad to be proud of me. I wanted to be the golden child. But I never built anything real. I just built a performance." "That sounds about right." He looked at me directly for the first time. "You built something real. You did the work, and you didn't care if anyone noticed or gave you credit. I used to think that made you weak, but I was wrong. That made you strong." I leaned back in my chair, studying him carefully. I didn't know if he'd really changed, or if he was just tired of falling. "Why are you here, Liam?" "I'm not asking for money if that's what you're thinking. I know that bridge is burned. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. I understand what I did to you, and I'm sorry. I appreciate that. I also wanted to ask you something. Not for money," he added quickly. "For advice. You built your business from nothing. How did you do it? How did you figure out what to sell? How to make it work?" I studied him for a moment longer. He looked sincere, humbled. Maybe the last few months had actually taught him something. "It took time," I said. I started small back in 2017, bought a few items, listed them on eBay and Amazon, learned what sold and what didn't. I made mistakes, lost money on products that didn't move. But I kept adjusting, kept learning. The key was treating it like a real business from day one, not a side hustle. Did you ever feel like giving up? All the time, especially in the first 2 years when I was barely breaking even. But I believed in what I was doing, and I was willing to put in the work even when no one else could see the progress. He nodded slowly. I don't know if I have that in me. Then find something you do believe in. You can't build anything lasting on image alone. It has to be based on something real. We talked for another 30 minutes. I gave him practical advice about budgeting, about finding cheaper alternatives, about rebuilding credit. I didn't offer to help financially, and he didn't ask. When he left, he shook my hand. "Thanks for talking to me," he said. "I know I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance to get their life together. Just don't expect me to fund it." He smiled slightly. Fair enough. After he left, I thought about whether I'd done the right thing. Part of me wondered if I should have helped him more, given him guidance earlier, tried to prevent the collapse. But the truth was, he wouldn't have listened back then. He had to fall to understand why he'd been standing on nothing. Dad called me the next week. "Liam told me he went to see you." He did. "How did that go?" "Better than I expected." He apologized. We talked. I gave him some advice. He seems different lately, more serious, less concerned with appearances. Losing everything will do that to a person. Dad was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking a lot about the way I treated you over the years, about the things I said. I was wrong, Ryan. Not just about you, but about what success actually looks like. I know. I measured both of you against the wrong standard. I thought success meant fitting into a certain mold, looking a certain way, following a traditional path. But you showed me that real success is about building something sustainable, something that doesn't collapse the moment the facade cracks. I appreciate you saying that, Dad. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of what you built and how you built it." Those words hit harder than I expected. I'd spent so many years wanting to hear them that I'd almost convinced myself they didn't matter anymore. But they did. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." We talked for a while longer. He told me about a camping trip he was planning for the spring, asked if I could recommend gear. I suggested a few products from my inventory, even offered to give him a family discount. He laughed and said he'd pay full price because he wanted to support my business properly. After we hung up, I walked out to my deck. The December cold bit at my face, but the sky was clear, and the mountains stood sharp against the horizon. Somewhere in the city below, Liam was probably riding the bus home from work to his small apartment, still trying to figure out how to rebuild his life. Dad was planning a camping trip with gear from my company, and I was here, running a business that brought in more money than either of them probably imagined. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The revenge I'd wanted hadn't required elaborate schemes or cruel actions. It had only required the truth. I'd simply stopped hiding who I was and what I'd accomplished. I'd stopped funding someone else's lie and started investing in my own reality. And when everything fell apart for Liam, the truth was still standing. I was still standing. Sometimes revenge isn't about making others suffer. It's about refusing to suffer in silence anymore. It's about stepping out of the shadows and letting reality speak louder than any words ever could. I went back inside and checked my orders for the day. 43 sales, including 2 high-margin tent packages. Another good day. Another step forward. Life was exactly what I'd built it to be. And for the first time in years, that was enough. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and turn on notifications to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.